She didn't raise her voice when she said it, and somehow that made it worse. My fiancée, Sloane Harrington, stood across the marble kitchen island and told me that if I didn't apologize to her ex-boyfriend, the wedding would be canceled. I remember blinking, not because I didn't hear her, but because I was trying to understand how something like that could sound so normal to her. Then cancel it, I said. The words came out calm, too calm, and in that moment, I watched something shift behind her eyes. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, something calculating. We had been 6 weeks away from the wedding. The venue was booked in Greenwich, Connecticut. The guest list included names that could open doors most people never even saw. My parents had already wired their contribution. Her family had already hosted the engagement dinner at their country club. Everything was moving exactly the way people expected it to. Except now, suddenly, everything was hanging on a man I had never even met. His name was Evan Calloway, Sloane's ex, a name she had mentioned casually before, always framed as history, always something resolved. Or at least, that's what I thought. He deserves respect, she said, folding her arms. I noticed how steady she looked, like she had already rehearsed this conversation in her head. He's been through a lot, and you disrespected him. I let out a quiet breath. I've never spoken to him, I replied. She tilted her head slightly. That's exactly the problem. And that's when I realized this wasn't about logic. This was about something deeper, something unspoken. Because you don't ask your future husband to apologize to another man unless that man still holds weight in your life. Real weight. Before we go further, I want you to pause for a second and think. If you were in my position, would you even consider apologizing to someone you've never wronged just to save a wedding? Or does that already cross a line you can't come back from? I didn't answer her immediately. Instead, I asked a different question. What exactly did I do? She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. You didn't acknowledge him at the engagement party, she said. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. There had been over 100 people there. Business partners, family friends, people I was meeting for the first time. You wanted me to single out your ex-boyfriend and greet him? I asked. Yes, she said. No hesitation this time. He was important to me. Was. Past tense. But it didn't feel like the past. Not the way she said it. The next few minutes felt like a negotiation I never agreed to enter. She talked about respect, about emotional maturity, about how this was a small gesture that showed I understood her. I listened, quietly, because sometimes the most important thing you can do is let someone fully explain themselves. People reveal more than they intend when you don't interrupt them. And what she revealed wasn't just about Evan. It was about control, about expectation, about a version of me she had already decided I needed to become. You're overreacting, she said at one point. I'm asking for something simple. I nodded slowly. You're not asking for an apology, I replied. You're asking me to lower myself to maintain your comfort. Her expression hardened. That's not what this is. But we both knew it was. The silence that followed was heavier than anything we had said, because now we were no longer discussing an apology. We were confronting something much bigger. Power, boundaries, and the reality of who we were becoming together. The next day, she sent me his number. Just like that. No discussion, no context, just a name and 10 digits. As if it were already decided. I stared at it longer than I expected to, not because I was considering calling him, but because I was trying to understand what kind of future required this kind of compromise. Later that evening, I met my father for dinner. Reed Prescott didn't believe in long speeches. He believed in clarity. What's the problem? He asked after I explained everything. She wants me to apologize to her ex, I said. He didn't react immediately. He just looked at me, the way he always did when he was measuring something. And if you don't, the wedding's off. He nodded once. Then he said something I didn't expect. Good. I frowned. Good. If a marriage depends on you kneeling before someone you've never wronged, he said calmly, then it's not a marriage. There was no anger in his voice. No judgment. Just a simple observation. And that's what made it land. Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from loud moments. It comes from quiet ones. That night, I went back to the apartment Sloane and I shared. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Did you call him? She asked without looking up. No, I said. Now she looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw it again. That shift, that cold calculation. Then I think we're done here, she said. No hositashchen, no emotion, just a conclusion. I nodded. Yeah, I said. I think we are. There was no shouting, no dramatic exit. Just two people standing in a space that no longer meant what it used to. Over the next week, everything unraveled exactly the way you'd expect. Calls were made. Plans were canceled. Deposits were discussed. Families got involved. And of course, narratives were formed. I became the man who refused to compromise. She became the woman who asked for respect. And somewhere in between those versions of the story, the truth existed. But the truth doesn't spread as easily as a clean narrative. A few days later, I got a message. Not from her. From him. Evan Calloway. I hear there was an issue, it read. No hostility. No arrogance. Just curiosity. I stared at the message for a long time. Because now I had a choice. Respond. Or let in here. Before we go further, what would you do? Would you reply and try to understand his side of the story? Or would you walk away completely and never look back? I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I realized something important. This situation was never about him. It was about what Sloan expected from me. And once you see that clearly, there's nothing left to solve. Weeks passed, then months. Life moved on the way it always does. Quietly, relentlessly. I focused on my work, on rebuilding routines that didn't involve her, on understanding how something that looked so stable could shift so quickly. And eventually, the noise faded. Not completely, but enough. One afternoon, I ran into a mutual acquaintance at a private event in Manhattan. He mentioned Sloan casually, said she had moved on quickly, said things didn't work out the way she expected. I didn't ask for details, because some endings don't need follow-up. They just need distance and clarity. Looking back, the most important moment wasn't when she gave the ultimatum. It wasn't even when I said no. It was the moment I understood what saying yes would have meant. Because sometimes the decision isn't about losing someone. It's about deciding who you're willing to become to keep them.